Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Live Positive Ministries podcast / YouTube discussions. And today we're going to touch about a really hot subject, and that's Roe v. Wade, as it's obviously something that's big in the news these days. It's sad. It's sad to see the way we handle these sorts of situations, and it's sad to see the culmination of aggressions and malcontent and such that we're seeing due to the lack of open and honest conversation that we've all had or not had with each other over the years. This is always framed, and understandably so, as a religious right discussion versus a radical left discussion. And while there's truth to that, the reality of it is it shouldn't be. Okay. Yes, you look historically at the you've got two polarizing issues here. You have one, the religious radical right that looks at abortion as an absolute no. No abortion should ever, unflinchingly no abortion should ever happen under any circumstance. And if you want to go into history far enough back, you could say even masturbation would be wrong because you're spilling your seed that is potentially a life. So there's this extreme side of things that says under no circumstances, absolutely not, we cannot ever have an abortion. And now you have this extreme left version of things that says we can have abortions up to the moment of birth, and in some cases after birth. Let the baby be born and die. And both are ridiculous for many, many reasons, because we live in a society that's complex. We live a complex existence, and there are complexities and there are nuances to every single situation. So while of course, I can understand, listen, I as a spiritual person, I as someone that was brought up in the church, very, very, very uncomfortable with ending a life in any situation. But I also understand sometimes in life that happens. Sometimes, of course, the say it needs to happen is always going to be a debatable issue. But we have to understand there are going to be a group of people always who absolutely will not accept it. There's going to be a group of people always who absolutely will accept no restrictions upon it. And we have to understand that there needs to be a middle. They talk about so many polls, and most people do not agree to Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I do think that perhaps there's truth to that, but not in the correct context, right? And that's the problem. Context is left out of everything, and we're going to discuss that here a little bit. The context is, yes, most people, myself included, believe that there are times that abortion is necessary. As much as we may not like it, as much as we may not be comfortable with it, there are times that it is acceptable and necessary and needed. What most people, I think, if you were to properly poll them and discuss this issue, most people would not be okay with very late term abortions outside of certain limited circumstances. And the problem that we run into is we can't have these discussions openly, and much of that is because our politicians, our celebrities, the people that have the loudest voices are out there inciting the flames of anger and violence against one another because it serves their purpose. And while I'm going to get a little bit off the abortion topic, it's salient and important to this particular conversation, and that is we have to understand that these people are not our friends. Long ago, we have lost our politicians, we've lost our celebrities. These people stand to make a lot of money on you and I fighting with each other, on you and I not talking to one another, on you and I never sitting down and having these discussions and coming to a middle ground, reasonable agreement. They lose their fortune, they lose their power, they lose their influence. We don't need them. Politicians' job is to make national security and to make sure that we handle any threats to our country from outside of our country, or even inside if there are true terrorists, unlike calling parents terrorists, which is, we won't get into that. It's to keep the infrastructure going. is to handle those types of situations, and then let the states and the people kind of handle everything outside of that. And that's kind of what the overturning of Roe v. Wade will do, if it should happen, is just turn it to the states. And I understand that can be an inflammatory thought, but the reason why it's better for each state to individually, yes, it's fraught with some potential issues, but you have more power on your local government and your state governments, and more control over your local and state governments and how they act and what they do, than you do over the federal government. And the federal government knows this. The federal government listen, we've all worked in a company, right, where you may be a hardworking person, and the majority of people in your company are very hardworking people. And you always have that one person that is really good on riding the coattails of others, and oftentimes even is recognized by the boss as being wonderful. And every one of you know that that person's lazy. They don't do anything. They take credit for things they didn't do. They blame others for the mistakes that they did do, and somehow your employer buys it and believes it. That is our federal government, folks. That is them. They sit back, they cause the problems, they blame everybody else for the failures, they take credit for things that had nothing to do with them. And I'm not saying this is a left or a right or Republican or Democrat. Everybody does this, both sides, okay? So we must recognize that absolutely, beyond all other things, the federal government is not our friends. They are not our friends. And celebrities are not our friends. These celebrities have no interest in you and me. They have interest in staying wealthy and staying famous and staying powerful, and they do not care. Okay, and this isn't a unique thing to today's society. Go look at all of history, and that's why they try to rewrite history. They don't want us to look back and see that this has been going on forever, and it's hard for us to accept, and that's the majority of us, and that is on the radical right, the radical left, anybody that's out there right now burning abortion clinics, or anybody that was out there, in the past doing that, or anybody out there now burning pro-life places, or going after churches, or protesting in front of the Supreme Court and getting violent and doing these things, you are a pawn. You are a cog in the wheel. The very thing you think you are fighting against, you are absolutely supporting and feeding. And they don't want you to see that. They want you to hate me for pointing that out to you. Okay? And I understand why the majority of people that are doing these things, it kind of goes back to my discussion on the malpractice of religion. In a sense, you're doing your own religion, and it's the malpractice of it. Because at the core, you honestly believe you are fighting for someone's rights, as a lot of people who are conservative, when they say they don't want to do vaccine mandates, and they're fighting for their right to body autonomy. Well, in the abortion, you feel you're fighting for the right to body autonomy. You're fighting for the same things, just in a different way, and it's not. But you're being fed in all sides, being fed things that are partially true in some cases and complete lies in others. But you get up here and you see the Elizabeth Warrens and the Chuck Schumers and the Nancy Pelosi's and the AOC's and I'm naming all the Democrats right now because currently in the current situation the Democrats are in power and the Democrats are the most radical. And I'm going to openly say Republicans have done the same. One could argue cancel culture was started by the radical right. The idea, going out and bombing abortion clinics and killing abortion doctors was done by the radical right. There was clearly a time, and I think you on the radical left need to see this, because this is world is and time is cyclical, and what goes around comes around. There's a reason why these sayings exist, because they are true. There was a time that the right and the radical religious right were out burning abortion clinics. They were out killing abortion doctors. They were bombing clinics. They were burning books because they had things that they didn't agree to. They were getting pretty ridiculous. And I saw it back then, even though I was someone that was more on that right. I was definitely within the religious section of things. I looked at my own people and I called them out for it. Matter of fact, I voted Democrat for a very long time because of that. And I just thought it was ridiculous. It was going too far. This is not the way that we solve problems. Well, now we fast forward 30 years or so, and the left is the one doing these crazy things. and they're now going to the churches and causing problems. These are people that are good people in those churches who many of them would agree with a lot of what you're saying. But now what are you going to do by attacking their church? You're going to turn them against you, and you're going to now radicalize them and just continue this fight. Or I saw about someone firebombed with a Molotov cocktail a pro-life office. And these things, they don't help us. This behavior, just like you look at the January 6th incident, I can tell you, I know a lot of people on both sides of this argument. I know a lot of people on the right who were avid Trump supporters. I know a lot of people who were, are very conservative, who were disgusted by what happened at January 6th. And there's a lot of stuff that's not true about it. There's a lot of stuff that is true about it. But no matter what, it was disgusting. It was unnecessary, because those of us who are in the middle on things realized that is the kind of behavior that is just going to continue to polarize us. It's just going to continue to get the radical left to push further radical to the left, the radical right to push further to the radical right. It solves nothing. It creates problems. And so we have to understand that this is not the answer to anything. Okay, and we have to understand that no side is innocent. Well, again, I've always said the Bible has a lot of good sayings, and it's a lot of good. And one of the things in the Bible is, "He who's without sin." I can't talk today. I have a migraine. I apologize, but he who is without sin cast the first stone. And the truth is, in the radical behavior right now, it's the left that's absolutely going too far. That's making it very hard to have any kind of a discussion. And what you're starting to see is the right is becoming a little more radicalized and is now wanting to push back way too hard the other direction. The radical left, and many in the left, took the middle ground. That's what we do very often. Most of the people in the middle understand when it comes to the Roe v. Wade and the abortion issue. We understand that there is a compromise, that we understand that it's necessary sometimes. But you've forced people to take a side. And you can't take a middle. You have to take either you're going to agree with the right or you're going to agree with the left. And the left is saying kill babies anytime you want, no matter how late in, even in some cases after birth. And then you've got the left, or the right, that says never under any circumstance, no matter what. Neither of those can happen. It's just going back to my last episode where I talked about the gay community and how you can't hope, just like any group. I am a white man. There are plenty of people that don't like white men, and I have to accept that. I can't hope that I can't force everyone to like white men. I can force people to pretend like they like white men, but I can't force everyone to actually like white men. Same thing goes with homosexuality or anything else. You can get most people by setting an example and showing them that you are no threat and that you care for them and you care about them and you respect their rights, but you can't get everybody to accept. Okay, and we can't get everybody to accept in this situation. And, politicians are willfully, and in this case, I'm going to say, and again, I have to qualify, Republicans and the right do this too, have done this too, will do this again in the future. They are not without sin. But right now, it's the Democrat politicians and the radical left that are really getting out of hand. Although I see this pendulum turning and starting to fall the other way, and I just hope that we can find a way to get the pendulum to stop in the middle and not swing way too far to the right now. But you look at the way Elizabeth Warren gets out there and does her theater on all of the steps of places and on her TV shows and on places like The View. I'm sorry, everybody on The View is part of the problem. Everybody like Hannity and the right is part of the problem. We just go too far. But they know that Roe v. Wade changes very little. All Roe v. Wade is doing is putting it to the states. And yes, some states are going to try to ban abortion outright. Okay, and I know it's a little simplistic to say, and I've heard people say it, well, if you don't like the way they do it in your state, go to another state. Yes, for some people that's easy enough to do. Some people you can't. You've got too many ties to that state. You don't have the money. You don't have whatever. And that does create a problem, but that's where you become an activist within your own state. You appeal to your own local politicians, because there you actually can have a voice and can make a difference. Now, you may not be able to change it. You may have a state that just insists that abortion's not happening here, and the majority of people within that state agree. Okay, so that does leave you an option, and not to be cold, but let's face it, we have a lot of options here. There's birth control, which is very inexpensive. Condoms, the pill, whatever form of birth control you want to use. There is being more selective about your sexual partners and who you have sex with, and being more responsible with sex. There's nothing wrong with sex. But again, don't use birth control or abortion as a form of birth control. Just don't do it. Be more responsible. Now, there are exceptions, right? And most people, when they say that they don't want to be rid of Roe v. Wade, and I'm one of them, say that because we understand in cases of rape and incest, absolutely, it needs to be an option. In cases of where it's for the health of the mother, absolutely must be an option. And we must be given time to make the decision. And so to say within the first trimester that if you can't make up your mind by then, we should continue with the birth and either put it up for adoption or have the baby yourself and keep the baby, that's not unreasonable. That's giving you 3 months. 3 months to decide what to do. 3 months to decide what to do. We don't need, if you have to wait 9 months, almost a full term, before you decide what you want to do, well, that's not right. And, to sit there and say that this is not a baby at that time is really pretty ridiculous to say that. That is clearly a baby. And, it just is. We have to understand and accept. And I'm not trying to give the "it's just is" answer. I'm just trying not to get too political on this or to be too much on one side of this argument. I'm saying abortion is necessary. But I'm also saying that if you're on the far right saying never, you have to understand that under these particular circumstances, it has to be acceptable. And if you're on the far left saying up until the point of birth, I'm asking you to say, look, that's ridiculous. You simply have a fight that you want to win. You want to be right in your argument, and you're pushing against something that you don't like and that you feel threatened by, and you're getting extreme about it just to make a point. And so babies are dying painfully and horribly just to make a point. And one of the things I will use against those of you on the far left, where you like to, matter of fact, there's stories about some of these protesters, talking about how God killed his own son. So if he can kill his own son, why can't we kill babies, is kind of the argument of it. Well, you're doing the exact same thing, right? Or when you look at people that say, how can, if God is a loving God and a peaceful God, how can God kill babies? Well, we're going to get into that more at some point. Okay, well, if you are the party and the people that are about tolerance and acceptance and love and inclusion and all the things that you say you are, and all these cultural issues that you fight for, how can you fight so hard to kill a child? To kill a child. And now you can debate if that baby is viable and is a baby very early in the pregnancy. But when you're getting to 8-9 months, you're getting to term, that's a child. It's a baby. And just by you wrapping yourself and your mind into this thing saying it's not a baby so that you can win your argument and win your point is illogical. Just like someone on the far right that says every sperm is sacred and there are no exceptions, well, they're being unreasonable as well. Because if, let's say, a woman is raped by her father and now has a baby through being raped by her father and it's incest, and now every more time you look at this child, it's a memory of what was done to you, there's a real argument there to why you shouldn't have to deal with that. And, God gives us free will, and you may make that decision to say, okay, I need to terminate this. But on the flip side of that, to sit there and say, oh, well, I waited, until my baby was born, and now that it's coming out of me, I don't want it anymore. Kill it. No. If you say I don't want it, let's put it up for adoption. Certainly that's perhaps for the best, because no child should be raised by a parent that doesn't want the child. But we're in a very modern society, that's evolved in many, many ways. And one of those evolutions is to understand there are a lot of ways to avoid pregnancy if you don't want it. There's morning after pills, there's the condoms, there's contraceptives, the pill itself. You can get yourself sterilized. If you never want children, just go in and get sterilized. One time, boom, done. You'll never have kids again. You can have all the sex you want, and you never have to worry about having a child. There are many, many, many alternatives here. And we do have to understand, again, the radical left right now is, again, one that champions the rights for equity and equality and what have you. And we've talked very, very often about racism. Well, I'm sorry, but Planned Parenthood and a lot of the people behind the accessible abortions that we see today were excessively and exceedingly racist. And they did it to help control the population of minority groups. It's just the truth. And you can say that maybe that's changed today. I don't know. But anything that's its roots were based in racism needs to at least have some light shown upon it to see if that's changed or not. And there are many, that went and did a lot of things that said anything that's in our country. They want to say that we have systemic racism, and some people want to say we're incurable of such a thing. But no, we're not. But they want to break it all down. So why should this be different? I can tell you myself, I've said it in other previous, podcasts. I grew up in a time where racism was much more acceptable. I can think of crazy jokes using the N-word that were thrown around all the time and nobody cared. I could think of times on television you would see things that, by today's standards is understandably very racist that was everywhere. And, I was around a lot of racism. Again, having my my stepmother being black and my stepbrother being black, and in Chicago in the early 70s, heard and saw a lot of things. And the world has changed a lot. So, again, we either have to accept that the world is changing, things are getting better, and continue to just push to change things, but not do it in a radical way, or we act like idiots and we just keep fighting. And that's unfortunately the way we seem to go right now. And it's happening, quite a bit in this particular situation. So, abortion is a very emotional thing. And we have to learn to meet in the middle, but it just can't happen because we can't talk. And the politicians and the celebrities that get out there and virtue signal and stomp their feet and say all the things, the divisive things that they say, and encourage you to go protest in front of the Supreme Court and get you angry, so angry that you lead to trying to harm others. That is not our job, and that will not change anything. If you truly want to change people, you change by being an example in a good way. You give a very good argument. You show in a very positive way that, hey, listen, well, I may be very angry about this. I may be very upset about this. Listen, I want to discuss this in an intelligent way, and I'm willing to hear your side. So let's sit down as two groups, two people, two whatever that do not completely understand, but let's find an agreement. And the best answer is always one that nobody's entirely happy with. And I would argue, and this isn't my thing, you'll hear it everywhere, that discussion is rape, incest, health of the mother. Yes, abortions happen. First trimester, yes, abortions happen. After that, no abortions. And the understanding that there may be rare exceptions in there for something unseen, unheard, but I think that all covers it. Neither side's going to be entirely happy with that solution. However, it's an obvious solution if we all just sit down. We can stop fighting with each other, and we can move on to the next thing and solve it. because our politicians are not going to solve it. Our celebrities are not going to solve it. None of them want it solved. They want things. And take a look at every time we get near an election. Every single time, folks, that we get near a political election, what happens? Something like this pops up that starts riots, starts protests, starts fights, so that they can get you off of topic. And do not think for a moment that the Democrat politicians are not loving this. And they don't care if some of you die on either side. They don't care. That is, you are collateral damage to solve the problem that they want solved. And that is the fact that right now things are looking very bad for Democrat politicians. And it looks like Republican politicians are going to win in the midterms by a landslide. So they are going to gin up this big situation and take advantage of it and capitalize on it and do everything they possibly can. And if some of you die on either side, so be it. They do not care. They are that detached from reality. They will tell you they care about you. They will tell you you matter. You are pawns in their chess game, and that is all you are. Why play that game? We, the people, need to take that power back. Okay, so don't attack people of faith, and people of faith don't attack people who aren't people of faith. Let's instead say, okay, we understand we have some very different agreements on here. Let's just come to a middle ground. Let's accept it and let's move on. Let's no longer give these people power over us. We need to take control of this situation again. And that's the only way to do it. And I can't tell you how often, yes, I am human. And I have had discussions with people, and some of the things they have said internally just start me on fire. And there's a part of me that just wants to rage and grab people by their shoulders sometimes and say, what is wrong with you? But you will never win an argument or hope to, change anything by behaving that way. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you and I are having a discussion, and again, we're discussing, I say the sky is blue, you say the sky is black. And I look at you and say, what kind of effing moron are you? It's obviously blue. You must be stupid. Okay? How are you going to respond to that? Are you going to want to have a discussion with me? Are you going to want to calmly want to talk to me and explain to me why you see the sky as a different color? No. You're going to fight back and you're going to say, no, you know what? You're the effing idiot. You're stupid. And boom, here we go. Fire, fuel to the fire. It explodes. We're having a big argument, a big fight, and nothing is accomplished. Instead, you say, well, here is why I feel the sky is blue, and this is why I see it as blue. Here's my reasons. Now, help me understand why you think the sky is black. And listen. Don't sit there and just be, listen to what the person is saying. Hear them out. At the end of that conversation, you may still think they're wrong. But what if there's a little bit of something you can see in there? What if you feel you're 80% right and they're 20% right? Okay, well then focus on the 20% that you agree upon. Focus on that 20% that you agree upon. Make some discussions and decisions and come to agreements based on what you agree upon. And you'll see that some of the other stuff will probably fix itself as well. It's not completely fixed, but you're closer to a solution. And over time, as you become more comfortable with the alternatives that someone's offering, or as with time, as you see that there's been benefits to the compromises that you made, and the world didn't end, things didn't burn down, now it's easier to start changing the other things. But we have to get past this immediate gratification. This immediate has to be solved now, because it won't be solved now. It takes time. Changes take time. And for us to meet in the middle, it will take time. But do understand right now, those on the left, and you're starting to see it, and I know it makes you nervous, the pendulum swings, and it swings far. And it swings too far often. And I don't want this either. I have openly admitted I tend to be more, although a lot of people these days, just because the way the scale is, tend to be seen more on the right. And because I'm a spiritual person, I'll be seen more on the right. And I am more conservative. I openly admit that. However, I am afraid that the pendulum is going to swing way too far to the right now, because the radical left has gotten so unrealistic and so unflinching in what they're asking for and their views, and have taken this, we don't talk, we don't need to talk, and if we don't agree with you, we're just going to scream over you. And you can literally see this is a real thing. It's everywhere, especially in the college age children who are out there, making noise, and just doing the fingers in the ear, la 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 thing. We don't want to hear your discussion. We don't want to have the discussion. We will not allow the discussion. Well, that's fine. And for a period of time, it will get you what you want. But it's no different than when you were kids stomping your feet on the ground. For many of you, a long time, your parents will put up with it. Eventually, they'll have enough. But now it goes too far. And now all of a sudden, it's going to swing way too far to the right. And then the right's going to look like the radical crazy people that are just doing things that just make no sense whatsoever. Let's find a way. We're not going to fix it right away. This pendulum is going to swing too far to the right now. But every time it swings too far one way or the other, we've got to get enough of us in the middle that we start slowing that pendulum, slowing it down until eventually it swings to the right, it swings to the left, but it doesn't hit such a high apex. And it's slowing down until it stops in the middle. That's where the answers are, everyone. The answers are always in the middle. The answers are always in an agreement that neither side is completely happy with. And that's, your life does not need to be boring. But life in general, the inner workings, the cogs, the grease in the wheels, that needs to be vanilla and boring as possible. Okay? That's why I talk about appreciating, and we talk about the gay community, or we talk about other people that are outside of different nationalities than you and different cultures than you. That's where we can find the color in our lives, the excitement and all of that. And that's it, all of us on the outsides of the workings of a machine. You look at a Ferrari, and on the outside it's beautiful. But when you get inside the engine, it's gross, it's dirty. When you take the skin off the car and you get down to the frame and stuff, a lot of it's just very unimpressive, and it all looks the same. That's government, and that's what government should be. It should just be this middle thing, that the inner workings that, it's complex, but it's dirty, it's gross, it's whatever. But most people don't really care about that. Just keep it working, keep it oiled, keep it moving forward. The interesting part's on the outside, and that's what we are. And that's what we need to be. And that's where we need to accept one another. And that's people that are religious, and you're faithful, and you're not comfortable with abortion. That's fine. But understand there are times it needs to happen, and be willing to compromise with that. And if you're on the left and you're trying to push this whole my body, my decision kind of thing, okay, I get that. Although we need to push that on everything. If we're going to say that applies to everybody for everything. However, understand that going all the way to birth, or even late term, that's too far. Come to the middle a little bit more. Let's come to an agreement. Otherwise, what we're going to constantly be pushing for is a far right answer or a far left answer, and that's never going to work. And so you're voting for constant fighting. Stop listening to our politicians. I'm never going to stop saying that. They are garbage. They are garbage. They are garbage. They are garbage. Okay? Stop. And that's really all I can say about that. So I understand I'm not going to make anybody happy. I'm kind of trying to put myself in that middle ground where everybody hates me in this particular argument. That's on either side of this. But I don't, listen, I'm going to try to live a godly life. And my godly life is I accept everybody. I accept that everybody's opinions matter to them. I accept that this is important to everybody. And I accept I'm not going to be a hypocrite. All sides do things wrong. All sides take things too far. And the right started a lot of the problems, and the left perfected those problems. And now the right's going to learn from what the left has done, and they're going to further perfect them. And it's going to be a never-ending spiral to our demise, or we can recognize we're pushing too far, and it's time that we all just kind of take a pill and relax. Anyway, this is Pastor Jason with another controversial subject, and I imagine it's only going to get more controversial. But just know I love everyone. I love all of you, even if you don't like me or you disagree with me. If you want to help me get the message out that I'm trying to get out, please like, share, subscribe. Please share this with other people. I would love to someday get monetized to help further my ministry, but I highly doubt it, because I'm not going to hide the words that I'm using, and I think that will likely never happen. But if you want to contact me, livepositiveministries@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd like comments, and even if they're against me, even if you think I'm way off base on something, let's have that discussion, and put it out there, and I'll discuss it if it's an interesting topic. And I would love to do that. But again, it's livepositiveministries@gmail.com. This is Pastor Jason, and no matter what path you take to finding God and finding spirituality, please just pick a path and take it. Let's move towards loving one another. Let's move towards listening to one another. And I thank you. God bless, and be safe.